Hillsdale College was founded to know certain things. Its first and highest purpose is to know certain things, to learn them and live in the contemplation of them. The claim was that that would have enormous benefits outside the knowing and in addition to the knowing, which is the first and most important benefit. And those benefits are civil and religious freedom and intelligent piety. And the claim in the founding of Hillsdale College and the claim in the founding of the United States of America is that kind of knowing is necessary to the preservation of freedom. So our work around here is knowing and teaching. We want to do it to as many people as want to learn. And we think that that's a service, first of all, to the happiness of their lives, and second, to the well-being of the land. Hello, welcome to Constitution 101 for the spring term of 2014. Constitution 101 is one of the core courses here at Hillsdale College. These core courses concern all the major academic disciplines, and they take up about half the time of a student here at the college. We teach this Constitution course to all the students here at Hillsdale as a requirement for graduating, as is everything else in the core, and we teach it every term. This is the spring term of 2014. My name is Larry Arnn. I teach the course here as a member of the politics department, and I happen to be the president of the college. This is an important subject because constitutions are important, and we're going to study why that is in this course. We're going to study the principles and institutions of the United States of America. That the United States of America is now an old country if you count the countries that have continuous constitutions. We are the oldest country in human history. Although in other respects, compared to places like England or France or even China, we are a young country. And our Constitution and the principles, especially as they're stated in the Declaration of Independence, according to which the Constitution is made, is the reason for our continuity and gives the United States much of its meaning. I'm going to talk about that a little bit today. This course is taught from our Constitution Reader, which, like most of our teaching in the humanities, is taught from original source documents. We don't really use a lot of textbooks here at Hillsdale College. We think instead that history unfolds, and the writings and statements and enactments of statesmen and leading citizens, and the enactments of laws in Congresses and the President of the United States, and upheld or not upheld by the Supreme Court of the United States. And so if you want to understand America, you can look through its history and you can find its history unfolding in those pronouncements, which are common to all of the periods in American history and parallel. That doesn't mean, however, that the history of America has been continuous or easy. In fact, we present the history of America in three major crises, and you'll see in the table of contents of this Constitution Reader that it is organized and grouped according to that rough outline. And I can even tell you what that is, easy enough. In the year 1763, the British won a war with France and decided that they were going to regulate and tax their colonies in North America much more than they ever had. And that led to a 13-year crisis in which principles began to be enunciated in a controversial way here in the United States that were not acceptable to the British. And that went on for 13 years, and then war broke out. And then the war went on for 8 years, and then the British colonial mother recognized the independence of the United States of America. And if it became on July the 4th, 1776, a nation, it became an established nation in 1783 with the Treaty of Paris. Things were troublesome. In 1787, they wrote a new constitution. In March of 1789, that constitution went into effect. And I would say that the American Revolution was complete with the election of 1800, because in the election of 1800, the party of Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, two of the most important founders, defeated and destroyed the party of George Washington and John Adams, two of the most important founders. The Democratic Republicans, they were called then, replaced the Federalists. And that election is significant because it is probably the first time in human history that a free people, by broad suffrage, elected a new government of a new party, and there was a peaceful transformation. And that was a tremendous achievement, even if you like George Washington better than Thomas Jefferson, which I happen to do, although I like Thomas Jefferson just fine. So that, in a way, establishes the political system of America. And then the next crisis comes not so long after that, and that's the crisis of the Civil War. Beginning in about 1820, a few years before that, two ideas came together to start producing trouble. And one idea was the idea that slavery is a good thing. You will see in our reader that the leading founders, whenever they speak of slavery, including the slaveholders among them, you will see that they condemn that institution. And there's no considerable public opinion, and there's no leading person who fails to do that at the time of the American Revolution. And 30 or so years later, it becomes common for people to say that slavery is a good idea. And you don't have to speculate about why they said that, because they wrote why they said that, and it's in our Constitution. You can read it. John C. Calhoun said that the blacks are inferiors, and it would be an abomination to live with them. Jefferson Davis says that they are the children of Canaan, cursed by God to be our slaves. So the idea is, this is good. This is not a mistake. This is not an import from Britain for which we condemn the British for letting it happen here, as happened commonly in the Revolution. It's not a thing to be banned, as it was very extensively constricted in the Revolution. For example, Virginia gave the Northwest Territory, 6 states today, I think it is, including Michigan, where I stand right now, to the federal. Virginia gave that land, it owned that land, had claim to that land to the federal government on condition, and this is stated in the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, that there be no slavery ever permitted in it. And something changed between that 1787 statement in 1820 and 1830 and 1840 and 1850, and that is a new view of the human being. The human being is not a product of nature and God's providence. The human being is a product of time and circumstances. And the time and circumstances shape us, and they've made these ones inferior, and we get to own them. That's one thing, but there's another, and that is there's a vast land to the west, and it has to be settled. People want to go there, and they're going there at a pace. They have been doing that since the first colony was planted in the early 17th century, and the momentum is gathering. And if people are going to go to a place, there's going to have to be laws to govern how they live in that place. And those laws are either going to recognize and protect human slavery, or they are not. And so, and you can't have slavery without an elaborate set of laws to protect it, because the slaves, although there were many claims that it was good for the slaves, and even the claims that they liked it, they had the terrible propensity to try to get away. And so in Alabama, you can read the Alabama Slave Code in our reader, they had laws that all free white males had to ride posse several nights a month, one or two or three or four, or a week even if it was needed, to look for runaway slaves even if they were not slaveholders. So you're going to have a structure of law like that to protect slavery, or you're going to ban it. And those are the two options, and there's a fight about what to do. And that crisis over slavery, which we'll go through in this reading, issued in the Civil War, the worst of America's wars, the most costly of our wars, a terrible, terrible thing. I can tell you I stand on the ground of Hillsdale College right now, and Hillsdale College had very much to do with that war. And had very much to do with the policies that were worked out to resist slavery, and fought very bravely. Many, many, many young men, given the size and age of the college, no college except the military academies had so many in proportion, and hardly any college had as many in absolute terms. It was a very costly thing, very costly for us. We lost many sons in that war. That crisis issues in a third one, and it's gone on for a long time now. And very many of the readings in the Reader are about that crisis. It is a crisis that's among us today. It is the idea, and you can see there's a similarity between this modern idea I'm about to state and the idea that I ascribed to the Confederacy. You can decide for yourself if I ascribed it rightly or not. The readings are here in the Reader. But this modern idea is that human beings are evolving and society is evolving and everything has changed. And because that's true, and because we have the tools of modern science and scientific administration, we've discovered this fact of the historical process of progress through the use of modern science, thinking scientifically, but we also can administer scientifically, and we could get control of this process. And there's a very large literature that comes first out of the academic world and then into politics, and that is a major claim of the current day. So you're going to need, if you want to understand the story of America, in our opinion, you're going to need to understand those three crises. And what an understanding of each of them will do, it will lead you to compare positions in a debate. Most of the readings in the Constitution Reader of Hillsdale College are hostile to the reading of the Constitution of the United States that, say, James Madison gave to the Constitution that he more than anyone wrote. Most of the readings in the Reader are hostile to the reading of the Declaration of Independence that, say, Thomas Jefferson gave. And that's because that's what the story is. And when you work up your position about all of these things, and we're going to equip you to do that, then you'll be able to do it in comparison with the major claims. We think this is important for so many reasons, and I'll name two. One of them is that crisis continues today. I'll give two examples. In November, there was a conference of a place called the Center for American Progress, and in that conference they discussed the subject of religious freedom. There were some leading clerics there. I know it because one of our graduates, one of my kids, I call them, wrote an article about it in the Washington Examiner, covered the conference for 3 or 4 days. And what he said was that these new rights that are coming up, having to do a lot of them with sex and abortion and contraception and new views of the family, that these new rights conflict with what some people understand by their religion. But the conference was, according to our student and the Washington Examiner, uniform in the view that that's bigotry and that no religious freedom can be allowed to stand in the way. Now, I don't say that to take a position on it. I just say that's a very fundamental point, isn't it? The Northwest Ordinance, which is one of the four organic laws of the United States of America in the 1787 document that I mentioned before, it's a very beautiful document. And it provides, for the first time in human history, a way for a free government to grow. And it did something really remarkable, something nobody had ever done before. When Kansas came into the Union, it was on exactly the same footing as Virginia, the Old Dominion, one of the original states. And the citizens of Kansas were equal citizens right alongside the citizens of Virginia. No colonies in America. And this Northwest Ordinance, it says that all of the laws made in the territories and all of the laws made by states after they become states have to conform to the ultimate purpose of civil and religious freedom. It's in that document. And of course it's in the Declaration of Independence too. And it is the understanding of the Constitution, of those who wrote it, that the purpose of the Constitution is to defend that kind of regime. And that kind of regime is the kind that's in question now. What is the meaning of that thing? And that means something fundamental is going on. Another example, President Obama said in the State of the Union message, recent date, he said, I have a phone and a pen, and I can act on my own very extensively. That raises a question about separation of powers. And James Madison says in the Federalist Papers, you're going to get to read it. He says that the structure of the Constitution is the most important thing about it and its most powerful tool in defending liberty. And the structure of the Constitution is, it's arranged in these articles, and each of the first three articles is about a branch of government. Separation of powers is the fundamental organizing principle of the Constitution of the United States. Now, I don't take a position on that either. I looked it up. Obama has actually signed fewer executive orders than most of his immediate predecessors, fewer than Ronald Reagan, for example. And he has said, after a time, he said, the Constitution limits what he can do, and he recognizes that. But I am saying that if that is an issue, that's a fundamental issue. And of course, the government is very different in size and scope and structure than it used to be. And that's happened in the last 50 years. And the former government, you can just see what the change is, if you want to, by walking around Washington, D.C. And the old pretty buildings are still there, and there aren't many of them. And they're designed in a certain way. And if you look at the new buildings, the ones along the mall, the ones off the mall, in the center of Washington, D.C., you will see that they are designed to hold a lot more people in a different structure than the old one. The Capitol, for example, doesn't have very much private space in it. It's vast halls where people can get together and deliberate. Its architecture is built around conveying the idea that's what is to happen in there. And these new buildings are not like that. Different kind of government, different kind of structure. And learning to distinguish that seems to me, and us here at Hillsdale College, an urgent thing. I'll say a word about the college. The college was founded in 1844 with a purpose to defend civil and religious freedom and intelligent piety, and it was deeply loyal to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. It still is today. And at the same time, it's an academic institution. That means it proceeds by argument and proof. And we think that's of great value because we do understand that mutually exclusive things are presented to the American people right now. And they're going to have to make a choice between them. And our purpose is to help people understand that choice. And so that's why we do these courses. I'm going to give you, as best I can in this introduction, 2 guides as to how you might understand the Constitution of the United States. And let me try to turn you into a political scientist. And I mean by that the old-fashioned thing, the student of politics like the classics. We here teach those things. I teach some of them personally myself. I regard them as beautiful. That word beauty is a very significant term, especially in the philosopher Aristotle, my favorite. In him, everything seeks the good, and the beautiful is the highest form of the good. It's no accident that God is understood as presence of being in the presence of God is understood a state of beatitude. So how would you think about America? Let's say you're starting out in this course and you want to understand America. Here's a way to think about it. The classics argue that everything that people make has 4 things, 4 causes, they put it. I'm going to ask the question, what caused America up there, right there? We talked about the 3 crises. There are 4 causes of any work of art. And take a statue. My favorite statue is Michelangelo's David, followed closely by 2 others of his, the Pieta and Moses. I have seen all of those. It was a lifetime ambition to see those. And I only saw them in recent years. And they're staggeringly beautiful. In fact, I saw them, the college goes on cruises sometimes, and guests come, friends come. And the darn cruise line changed the thing so we weren't going to get to go to Florence, where the David happens to be. Moses and the Pieta are in Rome. I'd never been to those places before. It's a shame. But no shame anymore. I've seen them. And I said to the cruise line, I said, you know, I don't know what you're doing with this ship, but my crowd's going to Florence because we're going to go look at the David, and that's just how it is. And there's a whole lot of us on this ship. Be embarrassing if you left us behind, wouldn't it? So they changed back. And I got to walk up and look at that thing. What made that thing? Well, first of all, that thing is made out of marble. It's beautifully white. It's very tall. It stands on a very high pedestal in a huge room with a very high dome ceiling above it. And you walk down a long hallway to see it, and there's this incredibly imposing thing. It's just gorgeous. Wow. And it's white. It has a purity about it. It's made of marble. It doesn't look hard. If it was made of bronze, it would have an entirely different effect when you walk around the corner and look at it. It has a material cause. What it's made of matters very much. Now that's the first of my 4 causes I'm going to name, and I'm inviting you to think when you analyze things that people do, because this is what the classics taught us to do. Think about these 4 causes, because they produce everything we produce according to some great authors in the past, and it makes sense to me. But let me pause that and bring up the Constitution, because I'll tell you a weird thing. The word Constitution and the word statute are cognate. That means they come from a common root in Latin. And the word statue, like the David, also comes from that root. So you got Constitution, statute, and statue. What the Latin word means is to set something up firmly in place so it'll stay. So you can see why a statue and a statute, and especially a constitution, aim to do that. The Constitution of the United States, like the statue of David, is a work of art. Does it have a material cause? I think it does. I think the answer is the material cause of the United States, and it's very famous in the literature of the founding, is the land which they are enchanted by. They think it's just a massive and wonderful fact that they've got this whole continent. They named the army in the Revolutionary War the Continental Army, and they don't know how big the continent is. It's not until Lewis and Clark come back from their expedition, I think that was in 1806, so that's about 30 years after the American Revolution began in 1776. Nobody knew how big the continent was. They just knew it was very big. And isn't that great? And they thought that's tremendous, right? And then the second thing is the people. They thought that the people of the United States were a special people. And the reason is they'd come over here and built all this. And think how unique that is, that happened. It can never happen again, actually. Because a bunch of people come from a civilized place with religion and books and libraries and cities and order, commerce. And they come to a wilderness. And they get to start over. But they bring the knowledge of all that with them. One of the reasons we're so fascinated with Western movies, in my opinion, also Doug Jeffrey, one of the vice presidents here, who's a great expert on John Ford, thinks this too, is that the West is a replay of the founding of America. And you know, like in the great movie Liberty Valance, Jimmy Stewart's carrying a law book. The town where he is, they could never produce a law book. They couldn't print it. They wouldn't have time to write it. They didn't have any way to bind it, right? The law book was a gift to them from another place. And they had brought it out here with them. And they're starting over in the West. So if the material cause of David is the marble, and I'm going to tell you again, this is a very extraordinary piece of work, this thing. The material cause of the United States of America is the incredible blessing of the land and the people. I'll write that down. What else made the David? Michelangelo made David. Michelangelo was a tremendous man. And if you look at those 3 statues, 2 in Rome and 1 in Florence, as I have done, and made a point, after long years for a long time wanting to do it, of seeing them all at about the same time. The Moses and that strength lawgiver, conqueror of Pharaoh, and the Pieta, the broken Jesus on the lap of Mary in St. Peter's Basilica. It is the most gentle and tragic looking thing you can look on. And the David, this boy about to go fight Goliath, young and very beautiful, with enormous hands, like the hands that might throw a stone and kill a giant. Michelangelo made those. Not clear anybody else ever could have done that. And so Michelangelo, the skilled sculptor, is the efficient cause of the David. What is the efficient cause of the United States of America? I'm teaching the Constitution class this term, it happens. And yesterday I had a really great class. And it's just fun, you know. And I teach for 2.5 hours at a time because I have to travel so much. And nobody gets bored. It's a tribute to the students. On a good day at least, you know. And yesterday was a really great day. And we were reading something Alexander Hamilton wrote that's in the Reader. It's called The Farmer Refuted. It's a reply to some loyalists. And it's a tremendous achievement of knowledge. He distinguishes Hobbes from Locke. It means he's read both of them. He distinguishes them, in my opinion, accurately. And then he explains why, if you think Hobbes is right, that the state of nature is so ugly that any government will do, that's what might drive you to put up with this, these people ruling us without our consent. But it isn't true, he says, because even without law, we all know right from wrong. And that standard is in nature. It's a beautiful achievement. And I said to the students in the class, I said, could you write this? You know, with the time you've got and not in the middle of an incredible political controversy where your life is at stake, where there's a writ for your arrest, could you produce this as an exercise in persuasive rhetoric with a philosophic understanding? Could you do that? It has some similarity to Michelangelo, in my opinion. Very remarkable, the achievement of the American Revolution. And the Michelangelos of the American Revolution are named George Washington and John Adams and Thomas Jefferson and James Madison and Alexander Hamilton. I think above all, they're named those men. And they are very remarkable people. So, the efficient cause of America might be the founders. What else made the David? The David looks like something. I named those 3 statues that I love. You should go and see them, by the way. If you don't, get really good photographs. You can get them on the internet and look at them. And set it up so you can pay attention and look at them big, one after the other. And they're very different. They have a different form. They mean different things. The heartbreak of a mother. Strength of a lawgiver. The inspiration, the divine ambition of a boy. The David looks like David. That is the form of the statue. It is the formal cause of the statue. The Moses looks like Moses. Moses is the formal cause. What does the United States of America look like? Of course, it looks like all its cities and its country and spacious skies and amber waves of grain. It looks like all of that. But when the United States of America acts, it looks like the 3 branches of government. And everything it does as a nation is related. And that means all together, officially, as a nation, is done by the President or the Congress or the Supreme Court. Or the many bodies in the state governments, which used to be more important than they are now and ought to be more important again, in my opinion. The form of the United States of America is the Constitution of the United States. It's the way it operates. And it's terribly important to anything what its form is. Because we could have a very different kind of government. We could have the British kind where the executive branch is located inside the legislature. We could have the Russian kind where they have a Duma that's quite independent of Mr. Putin. And is it really quite independent of Mr. Putin? there's an argument about that. And you have some reason to be careful, if you're there, about what Mr. Putin thinks of you. Different form. What was the form of Hitler's government? It was really Hitler. He did whatever he wanted. So we have a formal cause of the United States of America. And if you're going to understand the United States of America, and remember about these causes, that they all add up to something unique. And they're all required to explain its uniqueness. So that's the formal cause of America. It's the Constitution. The reason I write badly on the board is because I try to do it fast. It's a lesson to all your young people. What else is left? This is the most important cause of all, really, except you can't take any of them out and get the result. Why was the David made? Why did he do it? Because, you know, it must have been really hard to make. I think the thing is 9 feet tall, 7 or 8 or 9 feet tall. And that means there's this enormous block of beautiful white marble. And he worked and worked and worked. Physical labor, hard labor. And he poured himself into it. He said that painting the Sistine ceiling, a very beautiful thing, nearly killed him. There's a good movie about that called The Agony and the Ecstasy. Why did he do it? What made him want to do that thing? The answer to that question in human things is always love. He loved that thing. He loved the idea of that. He loved the notion of making a beautiful image of it. He wanted it to be so. By the way, if he'd done an image of a gambler or an athlete or any other kind of human profession, I tried to name something low, athletes are not something low, it would have looked really different. The David is gorgeous. It's sublime. And don't you love the story of David? Because it is remarkable. He was apparently a very beautiful young man. There's testimony in the Bible about it. And then it's overwhelming odds and everybody's afraid. And Goliath spits scorn upon him. And he says, I am walking up to you in the name of the great God. And he knocks him down. It's a tremendous story. One of the great hero stories, right? To know that story is to love that story. Surely, right? And so the final cause is the love that produces it. Not the thing itself, really, but the love of the thing in the artist. What is the final cause of the United States of America? Does it have one? Because, you know, it is a very powerful country. Something has moved it across the continent. Something has kept it whole. Something has made people sacrifice for it all their lives. The people who founded the country risked their lives. And they took the additional step while they did it of writing down why they were doing it and signing their name to it, which was a death warrant. And there was already a writ to get them out. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands that have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. Those words are words speaking truth to power. They're an act of love. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that to, and they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That's a statement that it doesn't make any difference how powerful you are. If you are to govern me, whoever I am and however weak I am, if you are to govern me, you may only do that with my consent. Now, by the way, don't you love that idea? They did. The founders of America expressed their love in the Declaration of Independence. And so we here argue. I'll write it down. The final cause of America is the principles in the Declaration of Independence. And notice, by the way, that they call upon somebody far superior to the king to their aid as they declare their revolution. God comes up 4 times in the Declaration, and he is the maker of the law, and he is the judge of their actions, and he is the guide of their actions. He is therefore the legislature and the judiciary and the executive branch, and he's the creator. And if you're going to fight the strongest man on earth, the man who controls and rules the greatest empire on earth, just beaten the second greatest in a big war, the King of England, you need somebody strong on your side. And that somebody, they claim, has laid down a law. And they are going to obey that law because they love that law. In the same way that Michelangelo loved that idea of David and making an image of him in some human way worthy of the story. So there's one last point. Is the United States, and is the Constitution, a revolutionary or conservative document? And the logical answer to that question is no. It's not either of them, it's both. And I'll tell you how. Think of the Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events, that means any time, becomes necessary for one people, that means any people. We start out with something about all times and all people. And then we make an assertion, the laws of nature and of nature's God, about the eternal law. Well, first of all, that law doesn't need any human conserving, but it is made in the name of something permanent. Think of the Constitution. You're going to read the Constitution and you're going to study its ways. And James Madison is, in my opinion, the best single expositor of the Constitution in the Federalist Papers, although Hamilton is very great and Jay is very great. What Madison says is that point about the structure of the Constitution. And why is the structure good? Why does the structure work, he says? He says, well, the fact is it's going to be a big country, and that means to communicate, we're going to have to talk out loud. And that's good for us. It makes us candid. We're going to have to make arguments that a lot of people hear, and that means we'll tend to make better arguments, no whispering in a little cabal. And he says that because it's going to take time, and the branches are going to have to coordinate, and they're elected at different times, the various popular officers, and for different lengths of time. House of Representatives for 2 years, the Senate for 6 years, the President for 4 years. All of those 3 elected by different constituencies. He says they're going to have to talk to each other. And he says, first of all, this places controls on the government. And he says that we need those controls because government is a profound reflection on human nature. Men are not angels, and angels do not govern men. So there's a kind of a point about the whole structure and order of nature itself, in which the Constitution reflects that. He says in the 49th Federalist, he says that because this process will work the way it will discipline us. It will mean that we'll have to reason. And he says it is our reason alone that must be placed in control of the government. Our passions must be controlled by it. Well, reason over passion, that's the classical definition of a virtuous soul. So those are old things, and those are things they conserve. But then on the other hand, this declaration to a king who had written to them and would write to them later that same year that he's born to be the king and we have to do what he says. This declaration, nobody is born that way. As Jefferson said at the end of his life, Some men are not born with saddles on their backs, nor others booted and spurred to ride them by the grace of God. Men are not horses. And that means nobody gets to own us. We are responsible for ourselves. So in that sense, it's revolutionary and it's changed the world, of course. In the conclusion, when we get there, I'm going to expand on that last point just a little bit because I'm going to try to explain the ambition of the American Revolution for our lives, for how we live. So it seems to me if you're going to understand America, you should think through those things. And also, when you read this reader, and I urge you to do it, because as I say, this crisis is going on now, right now. And you are going to have to take a part in it, whichever side of it you're on. And I would urge you to do the work to take that part intelligently. And that means think through those four things and think through the claims of the various parties about what those four things are. And see which one makes the most sense to you. Because you are a citizen of the greatest free country in human history. I claim that. We at the college were founded to claim that. Thank you for watching.